Welcome to Behind the Build. I'm your host, Jonathan Jacobs. I am here to talk with architects and designers to talk about their practice, their operations, their sales, what gets them going, and also what gets them upset. Today on the show, I have Winda Lau from Studio Lau. Winda and I have known each other for a number of years now. We have partially worked together on a project in the past, and I am really excited because we have a lot to discuss. So, Winda, thanks a lot for joining today.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
So, I want to start off by asking you, I know that, and we will get into like early inspirations, we'll get into school, we'll get into some of those topics, but I think one of the things that I wanted to start with, only because it was one of the last things you and I just discussed, there has been a loss recently in the community. Over the last few months, actually, a couple of people passed away.
Yeah.
Those are people that you worked with early on in your career.
Yeah.
Who was that?
So there's Barry Sampson and George Baird, who were both part of Baird Sampson Ewart.
Yep.
They were, I think, really instrumental in my early career and kind of informing the path that I took as I progressed as an architect. Barry was actually a critic at my final thesis review.
Oh, really?
At McGill, yeah.
At McGill.
Yeah. And it ended up being a great review. So when I got out of school, I gave him a call and he gave me a job, which is amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
we did not discuss this.
No, we did not discuss that. But yeah, so that's what I mean. He was definitely an important part of me as an architect.
Yeah. And
then, of course, George is such a prominent figure in the world of architecture, both in Toronto and globally. So, like both of them, it's just such a big loss in the industry. And it's really sad.
Yeah, I was talking about this with Betsy Williamson, Williamson.
Yeah.
And she had mentioned how much of a travesty it was to the architecture world to lose George.
Yeah.
And that he had contributed so much to the landscape of architecture,
Absolutely.
Not just here in Toronto and Canada, but abroad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely something that we'll never get back.
Yeah.
And, he's had such an impact on the city, such an impact on so many people.
What were some of the projects that you worked on together with them when you were working there?
One of the big ones I worked on was the Post Office Plaza in St. Louis. That was a lot of fun. And then I also worked on the Nathan Phillips Square competition, which BSN did not get, but it was a really great project to be part of.
Well, and I think it's also fair to say that you say, we won't get an opportunity to have him around. You don't get that back. But I think that one of the niceties to be able to have people like him who are so influential in what you do is that you take on a lot of those characteristics of the things that they try to bestow upon their young staff, right?
Yeah, definitely. Their legacy lives on, right?
Yeah. And their legacy lives on not only through you, but also through all these structures that they've designed, right?
Absolutely.
So you said that you went to McGill.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, as we both know, but no one else may know, there are other participants that have been on this program that also went to McGill as a part of the same class.
Yeah.
So who else were you with in school at McGill?
Vanessa Fong.
Yeah.
We were, I think she was a year younger than me in the undergrad. And then I took a year off in between undergrad and master's. And then we ended up in the same master's program. Yeah.
Crazy.
And the same goes for Barbara Bokach-Taylor.
Yeah.
So they're great people, great architects, obviously. And we still, hang out, have lunch sometimes, chat about the industry. Yeah,
and Barbara was saying that one of the first projects that she took on was a joint effort with you.
It was. That was fun. We were both young, but it was great. And it was lovely working with Barbara.
Yeah. And I will, okay, so let's actually go back to now before McGill. And I asked this question to many people. So while it might sound redundant, everyone's answer is always different. Yeah. So what led you into architecture? What put you there? Was there a specific day where you saw something, you're like, I got to do this?
So I'm not one of those architects who knew that I wanted to be an architect since I was 4.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I wanted to be.
I think I've only interviewed 1 or 2 people that have said that.
Oh, really? Yeah. No idea. So I was always a very creative person. So music, piano, violin, drawing, all that stuff. But I was also academically pretty strong. When I got to the final year of high school and it was time to apply for university, I had no idea. Came from a family where they really pushed for you to go into a profession like medicine or law.
Yep.
And I applied to a lot of programs, which would have led me down that path.
Okay.
And then I saw the pre-architecture program at McGill. And it was just like a last second whim. I submitted my application.
Okay.
And then if you fast forward to when they start sending out acceptance letters, I started getting acceptance letters from other universities for like my third choice programs, my fifth choice colleges. And I was confused because I had good grades.
Yeah.
So I gave them a call and it ended up that they had made a mistake and they had the wrong transcript.
No way.
Yeah. And so by the time they had it all figured out, all the top spots had been given out, all the scholarships had been given out. And then at the same time, I get this offer from McGill to go into their pre-arch program, which I think at that time was pretty competitive. Like there were limited spots for out-of-province students.
Yeah.
So to me, that was fate. I took it and, the rest is history.
I have to tell you, I have a very similar story to this.
Really?
Yeah. I studied broadcast and print journalism in school.
Yeah.
And I had applied to a few different schools. And one of them at the time was Ryerson, which is
Right.
no longer called Ryerson.
Yeah.
And they missed my application.
Oh.
And there was a deadline. And they told me, I called them and they said, okay, no, well, you can still apply, no problem.
Right.
You got to go through the same process everyone else, but you have 2 days. And I was like, I'm going to pay tuition to you and this is how you're going to treat me?
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I put all my eggs in another basket and left it behind. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, things happened as they should.
Yeah. So you went into school and then you ended up having George as one of the judges on your final
Barry.
Sorry, Barry. I
Yes.
apologize. Barry is one of the judges on your final thesis.
Yeah.
You get the job there. You work in some incredible projects. Mm-hmm. And at what stage do you realize while you're working there? How many years had you been there for before you realized I think I need to go. I got to pursue this.
Well, I was there for about 4 or 5 years, I think.
Okay.
And things were pretty intense. Like, I think the architectural industry is known for, the late nights and the heavy workloads. Mm-hmm. And I just felt personally that I needed to make a change. So I took a little time off, kind of reevaluated what I wanted to get out of this career. And then in the meantime, also studied for all the 9 exams I needed to get my license. And then a friend introduced me to an architect named Philip Toms, who worked out of Hamilton. And he was just a one-man operation at the time, and he needed some help. So I went to work with him, and it ended up being a few years. And I actually learned a lot from him because he did primarily residential, contemporary. And so actually that had a big influence on me as well. I drew a lot of, the way he practiced, the way, you set up things from him. So that was also kind of a fateful thing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you driving into Hamilton to do this?
I was taking the GO bus.
Okay.
And then I don't like driving. I think I mentioned that before.
Yeah, you did.
I was taking the GO bus, and then there were days where I worked from home as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the projects were solely residential, which was a deviation from what you had been doing previously.
Yes.
And what was the learning curve like in understanding the differences? And it could be assemblies, it could be products, it could be anything really between institutional and commercial projects to what it is to work in residential. What was that like?
Yeah, well, I felt like definitely I had to zoom in a lot more to certain details. And it's such a different world. Like it's so much more personal when you do residential. And so there's a lot of like the client interaction and kind of really listening and weeding out what the client needs, which, I found actually really satisfying.
Right.
So that really brought out a love for residential architecture for me.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have a board of directors that you're answering to.
No. Yeah.
Or a CFO and a CEO.
Yeah.
And a COO who are all telling you what to do and how they want this to apply. Like it could be that CEO's home or the CFO's home.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And the way they're going to interact for their personal life is completely different than the way they're going to look at an
Absolutely.
office space.
Yeah. And I mean, on the flip side, it could also be difficult, right?
Yep.
As you know.
Yep.
And often, you feel like you're playing the therapist or, really trying to figure out what exactly it is that they want.
Yeah. And sometimes people really don't know how to communicate that to you.
No,
and they don't even know what they want.
No, they don't. Or they think they want something, but that's sort of part of the fun. Like, I like to think when you do a renovation and a client comes to you and they're like, we want this, they show you a picture. You can't always give that to them, right? It could be site constraints.
Yep.
Existing conditions, could be a budget thing. But trying to like weed through what it is exactly that they like about that thing that they say they want. Mm-hmm. And then applying that differently in an alternate way. Right. I love that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's active problem solving, right?
Exactly.
Non-stop.
Yeah.
And you're met with those site conditions and it's active problem solving.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. And so what year was it that you started your own practice?
It was 2012.
Okay.
I started Studio Lau.
Yep.
And then took a few kind of smaller renovation projects. And then I had a baby. So that got put on hold for a bit.
Yep.
And then, started up again once he was probably around 2.
Okay.
Yeah. And then started building up again from there.
And we talked about that. We talked about the importance, I would say the importance of women in architecture.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that. I've touched on that with Vanessa as well.
Yeah.
And I think I want to go there with you. I want to talk
Let's do it.
I want to talk about that because I think that there is a strong misunderstanding or a lack of comprehension of what it is to be a female architect, running your own practice, mm-hmm. and then also looking after all of the responsibilities that females inherently mm-hmm. deal with.
Yeah.
And I say deal with because you got to deal with us.
Right.
in some way, or their partner.
Yeah. It's hard.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. It's hard, and whenever someone asks me about it, I'm just very honest. I found it very difficult, and obviously love my child, love the family.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to take on, and you just can't have everything, right? Like something's got to give.
Yeah.
So for me, the challenge is to balance that life and that work. Mm-hmm. And that means maintaining the studio to a certain size, taking on a certain number of projects.
Right.
To ensure that I, as well as my staff, we're an all-female firm, mm-hmm. Can have the flexibility and ability to take care of our families as well as our work.
Right.
So yeah, it's been a challenge, and I just take it day by day.
Yeah, I mean, you just said before that you have your son, and that's a 2-year commitment of your life. Yeah. To try to rearrange what you were doing with yourself from a professional and personal standpoint. Yeah. Right? And then to get reintegrated, it's almost like starting your practice again.
It is.
Right? Because you have to go through the sales cycle and
absolutely.
Try to find those projects. And how does that work? Yeah. So, like, you're not answering. It's in commercial, you can answer to an RFP.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
In residential, it is a lot of either word of mouth or you're paying for some level of potential SEO. Yeah. Your relationships with builders. Yeah. Friends, family, like it's a lot harder to grow a practice in residential.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm just awful at that kind of thing too.
Why do you say that?
I don't put out a lot of, marketing strategies or anything like that. I rely right now a lot on social media, which is so time consuming, as you know. Yes. And then word of mouth, certainly. And then obviously referrals from contractors and builders. Yep. And it's working, but also I constantly feel like I should be doing more. But what that is, it's tricky. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's also really hard to ever feel when you are a business owner that you are doing enough. Right. Right? Yeah. That is like a perpetual issue with every single entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
You could always be doing more, you could be driving more, you could be grinding more. And yeah. If you're gonna have some level of balance in your life, yeah, well, then maybe that more is not directed at that. It's something else to help balance.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you got back into it after having your son, what was that looking like for you from a sales perspective? Like, how were you going and sourcing the first few projects you got back into?
So luckily, those were word of mouth, like
Okay.
kind of friends of clients that I already had.
Okay.
So that was lucky. And then very shortly after that, actually, I found that I needed help. So I was on my own when I first came back. And so I obtained a staff member, which was great. And, that certainly helps in balancing life and work a bit, but also, I have control issues. So it's a matter of being able to delegate and letting go of some of the stuff that I normally would be heavily involved in.
Right. Which is challenging too, right?
Yeah.
It's your name on the drawing.
That's right. Yeah.
It's your license on the line.
Yeah.
And when you go to hand it off, as we were saying over lunch, we really hope, you really hope that person's going to have the same level of vision for what you're trying to put out there.
Yeah.
And so there's all that risk.
Yeah, there is. And there's a lot of, I think, personal reflection then on what I am willing to let go, or, some things that I might be hung up on that might not really matter at the end of the day. Is stuff that I have to.
Can you remember some of the first delegated tasks that you let go of? What was that?
I mean, the ones that are hardest are probably in the design process, right?
Yeah.
You kind of brainstorm together, and then you at some point have to trust who you're working with to run with it. So, that was a big one for me, because leading up to that, it was just me coming up with ideas, developing it, kind of putting it on paper. And now you need someone else to be able to understand you well enough,
right,
to do that. So yeah, it was a big step for me.
Yeah, and the hiring process, right? Like we kind of touched on that a little bit.
Yeah.
In our conversations previous to this, and I've had this conversation with many people.
Yeah.
Years prior to this podcast about how hard it is.
Yeah.
To hire the right people.
It's so difficult.
And I hear from everyone, because as much as someone might have an amazing talent, you need to have the chemistry. If you're creating a team, you need to have people that are going to be able, again, to balance each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that again is something that I had to reflect on and decide the most important qualities that I wanted out of the people I'm hiring. So it could be talent. It could be a willingness to, participate in certain aspects of the office.
Yeah.
It could be just the fact that, they're a great team player and that you can count on them.
Right.
It's very rare that you would get all of that in one person.
Yeah. And touching on what we had said before about being a mom.
Yeah.
Right? Female entrepreneur. And we, again, discussed a little bit of this earlier, and that is, you got to have someone in there that you can trust, where if you got a phone call that your child is sick, you have to have the communication with your partner and say, look, who's going?
Yeah.
You said that you're traditionally the one that's going to end up going.
Yeah.
That leaves all of the responsibility of the practice and what you're working on to that person you've now delegated to.
Yeah. There definitely has to be a lot of trust that they can pick up the pieces if you're not there. And that also, lets you do things like take vacations, right?
Yeah. Do you remember what that was like the first time where you felt like you could actually go away on vacation because you had a staff that you trusted? Yeah,
I do. And I trusted them, but I was still on my phone at some point, of course. But I was confident that they could take care of the studio while I was gone.
And where was that first vacation?
Turks and Caicos.
Turks and Caicos.
Yeah, that's my happy place.
White sand and blue water.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not been there, but
you should go.
I
really lovely.
Looking at your reaction to just mentioning it makes me think maybe we should add that to the list.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So you rely on a staff. How big is the staff now? How many people?
I have 2.
Okay.
One of them, Andrea, she's on mat leave right now. And she's going to return soon.
Okay.
So that's exciting to have her back as part of the team.
Yep.
Yeah. But we have 2 right now.
And this is a very common theme when you're running an all-female practice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If it's a young firm, you're going to go through maternity leaves.
Yeah.
Right? And then in some ways, there's also that risk of they go away on maternity leave. Are they going to come back?
Right. Yeah. It's tricky. And admittedly, tough. But obviously I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
And
I don't.
yeah, but it's, I definitely want to create an environment at our office where people are comfortable with having to take those days off because their child is sick.
Yeah.
Let's face it, nothing we do is really life or death. It can wait a day if it had to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I mentioned before, like there's a certain reputation that our industry has. And I just don't really buy into that. I don't think it needs to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very hard, but it's also, I think, fulfilling for everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, for my staff members to know that they have that kind of support, I think is really important to the practice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking about as much as you have that professional growth within the practice, there is the room for the personal elements to be as respected
Right.
as that professional side.
Yeah.
And you're as good as you can be when you feel like you have the balance of both with work.
Yeah.
And every now and again, you have those that take advantage of it, but
Sure.
that's generally...
I'm lucky I haven't had that yet,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, well, you're lucky. So you're at a point now where your practice is 12 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a baby anymore.
No,
right?
it's not.
It's about to become a teenager.
That's when it becomes a nightmare, right?
So your practice is going to be 12 years old, and the projects you initially started with were projects that were small renovations. Projects that you're currently working on are no longer just small renovations. Mm-hmm. So what has changed? How have you been able to capitalize on opportunities that are larger scale projects? One, and two, actually, I will ask two after you answer this one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, I have to think about that one.
That's okay.
I would say, you know, the bigger projects, like they just make for better portfolio pieces. Not always. Like I do love the small projects and the details that go into them. And I think a project of any scale certainly has great impact on the people who are living in it.
Yeah, we're not taking away from the merit of the smaller project.
Yeah,
that's not...
For sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, as in terms of like portfolio and all that stuff, it's certainly great to add those to the roster. But, you know, I just finished building a new build, which incidentally is my own house, which was a lot of fun. And I really see that as kind of a showpiece to be able to show clients, just not just in portfolio, but like live in person. And kind of to show them some details and things that I don't maybe normally get to execute in a client's house, maybe because of budget or whatever it is. But yeah, that I think is going to be a nice one to be able to showcase.
Fair. You're looking at me. I'm like, that's fair.
Yeah.
And I can attest to it because I renovated my own house.
Yeah,
it's
beautiful.
As we've seen. Thanks. But the nicety to that is that now when you want to show people how you can design a home, you don't have to pick up the phone anymore and ask a client, can I walk through your house?
Yeah.
Which then lends itself to being able to very soon acquire more projects because now people understand, oh, if you can do it for yourself, then you can definitely do it for me.
Yeah.
If you haven't done it for yourself, can you really do this? Can you show me a client's house? And that client may say yes or no, depending on what the scenario is for them. So, and you just finished this and you just moved in, right? This was in the last month and a half that you moved in?
Yeah. It's been fantastic. It's been great.
And what would you say are some, maybe one or two of the details within your own home that you said other clients potentially hadn't done because of either budget constraints or the creative process?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you know this. I'm sure my husband has told you this, but we have a basketball court in our house, which is funny because we don't have a huge lot. It's more of a half court. Yep. But early on, we were talking about renovating and doing an addition on the house. And then I was like, what if we knocked it down and rebuilt? Because it just wasn't doing it for me in terms of space and the current layout. And my husband was like, I don't want to get into that. I'm not sure about that. But then he came back to me with a challenge, which is, and he loves basketball. The challenge was, if you can fit a basketball court in this house, then let's do it. And so 2 weeks go by, and I give him some plans, and he's like, oh, crap, let's do it. So there is a basketball court with 18-foot ceilings in our basement. So that was a fun one. And then for other details, it's things like, all the integrated stuff that we architects love that doesn't always get to be executed in our clients' projects.
Okay.
All the reveals and, the metal work and all that stuff. So, yeah, it was really fun. And I think definitely gave me a different perspective. Because, when you're designing for a client, it's one thing.
Yeah.
And you almost know very definitely what the best thing is for your client. But when it comes to your own house, there's a lot of possibilities out there for you. And you sort of also want to push the envelope a bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was really interesting.
And do you feel like the outcome from the start to where you have now moved in, that you achieved everything you were looking to achieve with this? Like, were there any major concessions that you had to make through the course of the project that deviated from the original plan?
No, not really.
Okay.
Actually, it was great. I think a big part of that is the constant conversations that we had throughout with the builder. So if a problem came up, we found a solution for it that never really felt like a compromise. It was just a different path.
Right.
And I think that's also something that architects bring to the table for our clients too, right?
Yeah.
Like we find the best possible solution. There's always a solution for your problem. We just have to figure out what that is and kind of reframe the goals.
I'm glad you went there, because that's going to lead us into the next little little topic. We talked about the challenge that you can have through a sales process in helping prospective clients understand the difference between a standard draftsperson and an architect. Yeah. And when I say the differences might be subtle in their mind, but they are not subtle. So how do you combat that? Combat? Right word? I don't know. How do you articulate the differences to prospective clients?
Yeah, this is a really hard one for me, really tricky. We always have an initial meeting when a client contacts us to give them an overview of what we do, because what we do is very specific, and we're a full service firm. So we are there from beginning to end, and we also do the architecture and the interior design. Right. To me, there's no separation between the two. Like, everything on the inside is linked to the shell, the structure. Services are integrated into the interiors for us. So right. I find it very hard to separate it. So I try to make sure that the clients understand that when I go through this initial meeting. But, not everybody understands it. You can say it, you can, give them a list of stuff you offer them, and they still, when someone else comes back to them with a fee proposal that's a third of what yours is, even if they offer a fraction of the services you do, it just doesn't resonate with them. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people don't actually know what architects do.
And so tell me, like, what a draftsperson is going to issue a set of plans, and that set of plans is going to be enough for them to be able to go ahead and get a permit in some way. Generally, that is the entirety of their service offering. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So
that's it. There's nothing through construction.
Yeah.
Any issues that come up on site are generally dealt with a builder, general contractor, project management company, construction management company, whatever you want to call the person that's running the job.
Yeah.
And the quality that will come out from that drawing is in many ways a much less architecturally significant home. Yeah. So then what is the difference when you're dealing with a service offering that you provide? What does that look like so that people can understand that?
Yeah. So, we basically make sure that whatever product you get at the end is consistent with this vision that we come up with our clients in the beginning. And a lot can change during construction, especially on renos, where there's a lot of existing site conditions. Mm-hmm. And it could be, as simple as a light fixture that can't be put in the spot that we specified it to be because there's a joist in the way. And a tradesman might just be like, oh, we'll just move it over a few inches. But that could throw off all the lines in the house. And they just don't know that.
Right.
So we're there like every little thing that comes up that deviates from our original plan. We try to make that as seamless as possible whenever we have to make changes. And we make sure that it still integrates into the design properly.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's, it's something that maybe not every project needs, but certainly is a very helpful thing for clients.
Yeah.
And I think they get a lot more out of their project at the end of the day.
Yeah. And then in terms of just general plans that you're providing on site to the constructor, let's just call them that, the constructor. Okay. Those plans are not just a basic set of plans. No. Right? So what is the differentiator between the draftsperson's plans and your plans?
So we'll have a ton of details. Anything that's, architecturally significant, we'll detail it.
Okay.
We do all the interiors too. So we'll do all the millwork drawings. We'll do lighting layout plans. Like we have everything documented that the constructor, is that the term now?
I mean, that's what we're using for
the
now.
constructor needs to build it the way we envision it.
Right.
So I think, if you got a set of drawings for permit from someone, that's definitely not going to have those details. And then I think everyone just kind of wings it on site, right? So maybe you'll end up with something great, but chances are it won't be what you would get if someone was actually taking the time to show everyone what it is that they want.
Yeah, and like section drawings.
Yeah.
The connection points of certain details.
Yeah.
Those are the things that really make or break a project.
Oh, yeah. It's all about the details, right? Like it's a collection of details, and sometimes you won't even know why the space feels so great, but it's all these details coming together to make it feel just right.
Mm-hmm. You can't really, as a prospective client, you can't appreciate what this is. You just can't. Anyone who is in design can fully understand what we're saying right now. Yeah. If you've been through this, you can probably understand from a client's perspective. But if you haven't, this is really the difference of if a wall is out by 2 or 3 inches and the builder on site doesn't have an ability to go back to someone, they're going to go construct the condition that they have to construct. Right. And it could throw off all of the layouts on that floor, because those 3 inches could hinder everything else. It could put a toilet too close to a wall. Yeah. It could mean you don't have space for the vanity that's supposed to go in. Absolutely. Everything completely changes. Yeah. And so when you're looking at a cost evaluation, when you're hiring someone between a draftsperson and an architect, you cannot compare them. Right. You just can't. Yeah. You've got a mom who is spending her time away from her family, and all of her heightened fears of things that could go wrong, right? Because that's what it is, right? When you're handing off the work to someone else that's working for you, and they're putting all this effort into the output of the drawing that goes to the builder, so that something can get executed properly for a client. Like, that is value. That is the epitome of what value is supposed to be. Right. So I guess I'm really trying to talk to the prospective client that's out there to say, don't compare an architect to a draftsperson. Right. Yeah. What Winda offers is not the same as what a draftsperson offers. They're incomparable. It's like comparing McDonald's to a gourmet meal. They're not the same thing. I mean, there's definitely a market for that service, right? And sometimes, projects don't necessarily have the budget or whatever. But that market shouldn't be calling you. Sure. Right? Yeah. They shouldn't be wasting your time. Well, I mean, I think, again, it's people just don't know, right? Right. So they see your sign out on a street in front of a site that it's your project, and they give you a call because they want to do a little reno on their house. And that's fine. Like, we take projects of all sizes. Fair. But, there has to be an appreciation of the level of service that we provide and kind of the care and detail. If you come to me and you're like, I don't care what it looks like, I just want to split the space up like this,
then I might not be the right person for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've told people that before, like, love to give you a fee proposal, just, maybe you're better off with someone else. Like, not in like an egotistical, condescending way, right? Just like, I think what you need is, either you go with someone who does design build, or you can get someone like a drafts person to do this, because it'd be probably overkill to get me.
We've done the same thing.
Yeah.
Because you got to know where you fit, right?
Yeah.
And it is generally you're trying to fit into what is a niche market,
right?
Right. If you're getting to work with beautiful metals and really nice wood, and you can come up with details that integrate those two seamlessly, then like that is not the same as a drafts person. Just not.
Yeah.
And this runs rampant through the entire industry. In architecture and design,
right?
When people say, like, why should I spend that money? It's because what you're getting in many circumstances is someone that's going to show up on site when there's a site condition problem to help resolve it, and make sure that the detail is in some way going to work to what the original design intent was. I know you've already said that, but I got to say it again. It's not the same.
No. And it's hard for people. It's not such a tangible concept for them, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it's usually people who have gone through the process before and have gotten burned who really appreciate what we do and what we can bring to the table.
And they'll have done the research to know at that point when they're making that phone call that you're the right kind of person to work with.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're 12 years in. We're working on more exciting projects. You got to the point where you're able to go ahead and build your own home. You've got this incredible product now that's done. And I know that you've done projects that are also outside of the city.
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with the locales of where you're currently working? And are there any regions that you have not yet worked that you really want to work in?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy working within the GTA. That's where most of our projects are. We did a project in Marmara.
I can't say that I know where that is. Where is that?
It's somewhere between here and Kingston.
Got it.
Yeah, so I would like to, I'm very interested in kind of branching out. And there have been a couple of times where there were the possibility of, cottage country stuff. Yeah. And that's always something that's interesting to me.
Yep.
So yeah, we're very open to working outside of the GTA. Most of our projects are very local.
What about Turks and Caicos?
Oh, I would love that.
Right?
I just moved down there for a while that project is going on.
Yeah, that would avoid having to drive to the airport all the time.
Exactly. It's really a matter of practicality.
Yeah, I was wondering as you were saying this, is any of this related to the fact that you'd have to drive to these further distances when you're saying you don't like driving?
Oh, yeah. Well, that is partially the problem.
Fair. Okay. And I guess some of the other questions that come to mind on this is when you're looking at the overall evolution of your practice, you're about to get Andrea back, as you mentioned, from a mat leave. When you're looking at what you want to have in front of you for the next 5 to 10 years, do you have an idea of what type of scale of project you're looking for and how many projects you'd want to take on over that time frame? Do you set up your short-term and long-term goals? Because we had talked about this before about, some people see only what's right in front of them and some people see what's further down the road and planning for that. What does your plan look like, your business plan look like for your business on a go-forward basis?
I think I do want to keep things relatively small.
Yeah.
In the long term. Like I said, it's about managing my personal life and my work, and kind of, I like having my fingers in every pie. So, I do want to keep it small. So if we grow, it would be not that much, I think, in terms of staff members. And that will obviously be reflected in the number of projects we take. And it's hard to say how many, because it really depends on the size of each project and, the nature of it. So I would like to take on just enough projects so that
That's the right answer.
Yes, just the right number, so that, we can maintain that flexibility in the office. Yeah, I think I'd be very happy with that.
Okay. And the majority of what you take on, in your keen interest in architecture, because I've read it and I've seen it, is what style?
Contemporary
architecture, right?
So we're predominantly contemporary, and at the beginning of every client meeting I have that discussion. Presumably they've seen my website, so they know what style we do, but it's generally contemporary. And obviously, depending on what the client's looking for, their personality, the site, the actual aesthetic of the project will vary, but it's all within that, clean lines, contemporary. I wouldn't say minimalist, but, more minimal than
not.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Fair. Like none of the transitional work, ideally, if you can avoid it.
Yeah, ideally, like we will incorporate some of it. I think some clients are very comfortable with going very traditional in some areas of the house and not so much in others. So there's been times, we've incorporated a little more transitional elements into things like, vanities or kitchen cabinets. But in general, it's very contemporary tone.
Okay. And have you played basketball yet on your court?
Oh, yeah. I'm awful. I'm bad. But I love using the gym for other things, right?
Yeah.
Yoga, other workouts. But yeah.
Oh, you can do it. Yeah. Did you get weights in there too?
We did.
Oh, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So we're all set up.
Amazing. Winda, I really appreciate the time you take to go over all of this, to talk about your history, talk about the evolution of the practice, and congratulations on finishing your own home. I know that is like a marvelous feat when it comes to
a lot of fun.
Managing a practice, managing a family, and then also managing construction of your own. It is a lot.
Yeah, it's been an interesting 2 years. Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.